The locksmith stared at the heavy steel door in the back of my own basement, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. He looked at me, then back at the blueprints I had pulled from the city archives. "Mr. Thorne," he whispered slowly, his voice tight with uncertainty. "I don't think you understand. This lock wasn't installed to keep people out of this room." He paused, staring at the mechanism again. "It was designed to make sure whoever was inside could never get out. I had lived in that house for 5 years. 5 years. I paid the mortgage, I mowed the lawn, I hosted Sunday dinners for a family I thought I knew. But in that moment, as the tumblers finally clicked, something inside me shifted. My house had never really been a home. It had been a carefully designed cage, and the people holding the keys were upstairs, waiting for dessert. To understand how everything unraveled, you have to understand Blackwood Manor. It's an old Victorian estate sitting on the edge of a quiet Connecticut town. The kind of place where the morning fog hangs in the trees longer than it should. The kind of place where secrets feel comfortable. When my grandfather died, the entire property was left to me. That surprised everyone. My older brother Elias was the golden child, a well-known architect obsessed with reputation and success. My sister Clara was the social star of the town, always surrounded by people who admired her charm. And me? I was just Julian, the quiet one. I worked in data restoration, recovering lost files and damaged drives for private clients. I preferred silence. Computers made sense to me in ways people never did. But the inheritance came with a strange condition. I could own the house, but I could never sell it. And I had to allow my siblings and our mother to use the estate whenever they wanted, for what the will called family legacy purposes. At the time, it sounded harmless, sentimental, the final wish of a dying man who loved his family. So I welcomed them. I renovated the guest wings, I fixed the plumbing, I paid the taxes. For the first time in years, it felt like we were becoming a real family. But as time passed, the house began to feel different, heavier. Sometimes I would hear sounds in the walls that didn't belong to pipes. Floorboards creaked when no one was walking. And then there was the room in the basement, the one Elias renovated himself. He called it the utility room, and he kept it locked behind a keypad door. He said it was just storage, but something about that explanation never sat right with me. Still, that wasn't the strangest part, not even close. I've always been the fixer. If something breaks, I fix it. If someone needs help, I show up. I grew up believing my value came from being useful. My family understood that about me, and they used it. Elias constantly talked about his struggling architecture firm, asking me to help cover property expenses just until the next project paid out. Clara always seemed to have financial emergencies. Expensive retreats she insisted were necessary for her mental health. My mother would sit beside me in the garden and say softly, "You're the anchor of this family, Julian. Without you, we'd drift apart." Those words meant everything to me. I spent my savings upgrading the estate for them, making sure everyone had beautiful rooms and comfort. Meanwhile, I slept in the smallest bedroom in the house. But I didn't mind. I thought I was building something meaningful. A sanctuary, a place where our broken family could finally heal. And then something happened that made everything worse. One evening, something disappeared. Not a person, my work. I had been restoring a damaged drive for a major tech client in my home office. I stepped away for 10 minutes to make coffee. When I returned, the drive was gone. I searched everywhere. My desk, the floor, every drawer. Nothing. I asked Elias. He laughed and said I probably misplaced it. Clara suggested I had been working too hard and imagining things. 2 days later, the drive appeared on the kitchen counter, completely wiped. Not just deleted, professionally erased. I was furious. But my mother pulled me aside with that soft voice she always used. "Julian, dear, we're family. Why would anyone here want to hurt your career?" Suddenly, I felt guilty for even asking. I apologized. I let it go. But then more things started happening. My mail arrived already opened, carefully resealed. Bank statements, legal letters, even personal messages. Someone was watching everything I did. At that point, I stopped trusting my instincts, but I trusted technology. So I installed a small hidden camera in the hallway, and I told no one. The footage changed everything. At 3 in the morning, Elias walked down the hallway. Not toward the kitchen, toward the basement. He moved quietly, like someone following a routine. He entered the code for the locked utility room, but he didn't go inside. Instead, he stood there, whispering. Then something moved in the darkness beyond the door. A pale hand reached out, thin and trembling, taking a tray of food from him. My heart started pounding. There was someone inside that room, inside my basement. The next day, when Elias left the house, I went downstairs with a crowbar. But the door wasn't ordinary. It was reinforced steel. That's when I called the locksmith, and that's when I learned something disturbing. The lock wasn't meant to keep people out. It was designed to trap someone inside, but that wasn't even the worst discovery, not by a long shot. While the locksmith worked, I studied the original blueprints. That's when I noticed something. A crawl space behind the wine cellar. It ran directly behind the utility room. I squeezed through the dust and cobwebs, crawling carefully through the narrow space until I found a ventilation grate. I looked through it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The room wasn't storage. It was a monitoring station. Screens everywhere. Dozens of them. Every camera showed a different part of my house. My bedroom, my office, even the hallway hallway outside the bathroom, and sitting at the desk, typing calmly, was a man who looked exactly like my father, a man who had supposedly died 10 years earlier. My breath caught in my throat. The funeral, the closed casket, the inheritance. It had all been a lie. I rushed back through the crawl space just as the locksmith opened the door. I burst into the room. The man at the desk didn't even look surprised. "You're late with the data, Elias," he muttered. "I'm not Elias," I said quietly. He turned slowly, looked at me, then sighed. "Julian," he said, almost annoyed, "you always were the inconvenient child." At that moment, the basement lights came on. My mother, Elias, Clara, all standing on the stairs. None of them looked shocked. They looked disappointed. "We told you not to look under the rug," Clara said coldly. And finally, the truth came out. My father had faked his death to escape a federal fraud investigation. The inheritance had been a trap. My clean finances, my house, my job restoring sensitive corporate data, all of it had been part of their operation. They had been stealing the files I recovered and using them for blackmail, and I had been funding everything. "You were perfect for this," Elias sneered. "Reliable, obedient, desperate to keep the family together." My mother stepped closer. "We did this for you too, Julian," she said sweetly. "You'll never need to work again." But they forgot something important. I'm a data specialist, and I record everything. While I had been crawling through that space, my phone had been recording the entire conversation, uploading it automatically to a secure server. "I'm not the anchor of this family," I said quietly. "I'm the archive." My father's expression changed instantly. Panic. He lunged toward the computers, but it was already too late. I walked past them toward the exit. Elias tried to grab my arm, but the locksmith stepped between us. "Let him go," he growled. I left Blackwood Manor that night, and I drove straight to the FBI. 2 years have passed since then. The house was seized. My siblings are in prison. My father was arrested within hours. Their entire empire collapsed. Sometimes people ask if I hate them, but hatred requires energy, and I spent all of mine trying to save people who were busy drowning me. Now I live in a small apartment. No hidden rooms, no cameras in the walls, just quiet. Sometimes I still check the locks twice before bed. Old habits don't disappear easily. But every time I think about that basement door, I remember the truth. You can't fix a family that was designed to break you. You can only fix yourself. And after years of silence, the truth finally surfaced.